What's going on, everyone? So, we know this upcoming I Know What You Did Last Summer is going to follow suit to the previous installments. So, this film is going to keep the continuity of the first two films. It's why a lot of people think Brandy is going to return to the franchise or reprise the role of her character. But we'll see if that actually ends up happening. That's just kind of a rumor and murmur going around. However, I am glad that they're keeping the continuity. The third one, because I know somebody's going to be like, well, what about the third one? Doesn't exist. Forget about that. That movie was absolute garbage. It's just, they're continuing the story from the first two. So this isn't going to be a direct sequel. You know, you've seen that a lot in modern horror where they have like a direct sequel to the first one, the original, and this is like a 30 years later from the original. Yes, it is, but they're keeping number two in mind. You had the director and writer, like they basically had, there was a whole interview about it of like, no, we literally had like arguments over it on like, are we doing the continuity thing? Is this like a third part three, or is this like, and ultimately from, the information that was put out is that, no, this is continuity film, right? This is going to follow suit in the timeline, which again, I think is great, right? Like, first two films, how do you feel about the second? I know the second one is kind of mixed match and people love it and hate it. And, Jack Black is the Jamaican guy. And every time, Scary Movie, for those that are familiar with Scary Movie, every time I see Jack Black as that character, I think of Shawn Wayne's in it, where he's Ray, and he's like, oh, what's up with that? And he talks about the Jack Black's character in that movie. I like play that scene in my head every time I see it. Sorry, I digress. But point is, right, that I'm glad that they're keeping the continuity. I want to see them kind of press forward with this, right? You're having the legacy characters in it with Julie and Ray. You leave the door open for, little tie-ins and connections, whether it's this film or later films down the road. Because if this film has success, let's be honest, they're not going to stop here. They're going to have another or several if they can. It's just how it works, especially in the horror space. My only kind of like, okay, but then why is the plot the way it is, right? Like, this is a sequel, but it's a remake plot, literally. The plot for this upcoming film is a new group of teens do the same thing that Julie and Ray and Barry and them all do. And then they go and enlist Julie and Ray for help because 30 years earlier, they went through the same thing. So it's literally the exact same thing that we saw, right? You know who else did that? The remake, or the series, right? The remake series that was on Amazon, which, by the way, that was like unwatchably bad in my opinion. I'm sure there's some people that actually enjoyed it and liked it. Personally, I thought it was like, I thought that was awful. But my thing is like, okay, if this is a third installment, why are you doing the exact same storyline? Why are you giving that repetitiveness? Right, like I have my question marks about that. I might dive into that more in a separate video, but like, in general, I'm glad that they're keeping the continuity. They need to do right by Julie and Ray though. And look, I know Jennifer Love Hewitt talked about how like, hey, I didn't want to do this film unless I was going to have significance in this film. I didn't want to just be this like background character. I wanted to actually be in the film or like little cameo and whatnot. Right, we got that. We heard from her that, that this is what I want. I don't want to have all this, what you've seen in these other legacy franchise sequels and all that, right? I want to be a big fixture in this. And that's great. It's one thing to say that, it's another thing to happen. I mean, most of them say that. And then you get to the film and it's like, okay, so they didn't really need to be in this film. Like, I hope it's something where, like, I want the backstory. We haven't seen them in 30 years, right? Like, I want to know, like, how are Julie and Ray? Are they together still? Are they not? What are they doing in their lives? How have they been? Are they estranged? Do they hate each other? Do they love each other? Like, do they have kids? Right? Like, how are they going to approach this? I would have rather just gone the kid route. I would have rather just see them kind of like, hey, here's Julie and Ray living their best life 30 years later. Their kid is here and somebody just is going after them because it's the 30th anniversary and you got somebody crazy. Like, just keep the simplicity, the, like, hey, you can't explain crazy. Crazy people exist all over the world, and you got a copycat. I think that would have been fine. All right, like, is it kind of the typical, like, oh, copycat thing? But this is literally, you've done this. This will be the third time now that they have done this exact same storyline. Right? So it's just, I don't know. I'm all for it. I just think it's odd that that this is a direct sequel and maintaining continuity, but you know, I don't know. However, I do, sticking with the continuity element of it, I do think that this means that we're not going to get like some Ben Willis return type thing. Like, Ben Willis is back. Haha. Like, you know, or it's his son, you know, Ben's son, right? Like, or the daughter or anything like that, where if you didn't keep the continuity of part 2, you could have kind of done whatever you want. You could have done the son route again. You could have done the daughter route. You could have done the son and grandson, and they're avenging grandpappy, you know, Ben Willis and whatnot, right? Like, so you could have kind of left it open to kind of do whatever you want, right? Where now they're saying like, no, this is going to keep the continuity of part 2. So if you're keeping the continuity of part 2, then I don't imagine it's going to be anything to do or any tie-ins to the Ben Willis story. I think this will probably be its own story. They're just kind of rehashing and kind of going down the same rabbit hole again. But also, again, last we saw with Julie and Ray, they got married. Now, you could argue where they're in the house and they're happy and, you know, brushing his teeth and he's like, this thing's great, right? Like, and he's brushing his teeth and stuff and she gets dragged under the bed. You could argue that whole scene was just a dream sequence. That 100%. You could absolutely argue that because we know Julie had those dreams, right? You saw it in the start of Scream, the start of I Know What You Did Last Summer, and then you saw it at the end of I Know What You Did Last Summer Part 1. So you know that Julie has these dreams. So you could argue that. But even at the end, you know, they're holding each other. He's got the ring and all that stuff. So you knew that they were going to get married regardless. So if you're keeping the continuity, I want some of that story. I want some of that understanding. I want some of that backstory. I'm not saying you have to spend 20 minutes explaining and having us understand that, but at least give us some kind of insight into it. Give us some kind of deep dive into it, right? I want to know, like, give us just a good scene of explanation. Words are hard, right? So that's my hope. I hope that they kind of go that route with this. And, you know, but we'll see. We'll see how they approach it. We'll see how they go about it. Because at the end of the day, you know, they're rehashing the plot. So I do have concerns that kind of rehash other elements. We saw that with Scream, which is, speaking of Scream being in my head, that's why. It's like, they kind of did the same thing in Scream 5 and 6. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass question to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Phil, what are your thoughts? Do you agree? Disagree? Kind of mixed? In the middle? How do you feel? Whatever your thoughts are. Either way, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. Helps me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel. What are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.